I'd like to give a big thanks to today's webinar sponsor, Strategex. Without them, this webinar would not be possible. Strategex is an 80/20 and CX management consultancy with strong roots in manufacturing that consistently deliver measurable ROI. Strategex will be sharing current customer trends in manufacturing, drivers of excellent customer behavior and experience, and customer strategies to improve profitability. And today you'll be hearing from David Beameris, VP and 80/20 expert at Strategex, and Sharon Kotke, Managing Director, Customer Experience at Strategex. David and Sharon, I'll hand it over to you, but again, thank you for joining us today.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction and for hosting us today. So today we're going to focus on creating the right experience for the right customers, which will ultimately result in profitable growth. We'll start by sharing some of the key takeaways from our customer insights work that Strategex has conducted with manufacturing companies over the last 18 months. Strategex has been a leader in B2B customer insights work for over 20 years, and over 80% of our clients are manufacturers. We use in-depth interviews as our tool for gathering data for our clients and on their top accounts. Now, I have to confess that in March 2020, we were not sure what was going to happen to response rates for our clients that wanted to do studies. But what we found was our 70% response rate actually increased to almost 80% because people were craving the attention. Our clients' customers wanted to talk during the pandemic more than ever. And we'll see over the next hour how that theme manifested throughout our work. So first, our VOC methodology is used to understand what customers want and how our clients are delivering against it. Our interviews typically range from 25 to 45 plus minutes. And the purpose is to really capture unfiltered insights to steer improvement efforts and strengthen the customer-supplier relationship. To do this, we cover a broad range of topics, including Net Promoter Score, customer experience throughout the relationship journey, competitive benchmarking, brand perceptions, share of wallet, and the future outlook on spend, as well as trends in the industry. Voice of the customer keeps us honest, keeps us focused on what the customer wants and not what we think the customer will accept. And yes, ratings and scores are all part of the process, but the true value from the insights comes from the why and the what now. And that's what we'll be looking at today. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with the Net Promoter Score, and NPS is still a strong indicator of the health of your business. The way NPS is calculated is by answering a simple question. On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely is it that you would recommend a company to a friend or colleague? We take the ratings given and group respondents into 3 categories. First is promoters, and those are the 9 or 10 ratings. These customers are loyal enthusiasts who will keep buying and refer others, which helps fuel growth. The second group is those that give a rating of 7 to 8, and these are passives. They're usually satisfied customers, but not as enthusiastic, and they may be swayed to look at competitive offerings. And lastly is the detractors. Those are anyone that gives a rating of 0 to 6. These are unhappy customers who can really damage your brand and impede growth through negative word of mouth. Now, NPS is calculated by subtracting the percent of detractors from the percent of promoters. And your scores can range from as low as negative 100 if every customer was a detractor, to a high of 100 if every customer was a promoter. Now, one thing I'll mention is most companies measure Net Promoter Score across their entire customer base, or anyone that will click on a link post-transaction. And they come up with their NPS, and usually those scores are average at best. At Strategex, we use the 80/20 principles to steer our clients to measure NPS with their top accounts, the accounts that matter most. And we want our clients to focus on moving from an average score to the world-class category within that group. Companies that have a world-class NPS score have several things in common. To start, they have dedicated resources focused on delighting their top revenue customers. So what does it mean to delight the customer? Well, they delight with excellent quality. They delight by being easy to work with. They delight by showing they care. They delight by resolving issues and handling complaints quickly. And you really don't need to overthink what it means to delight your top accounts. It should be simple. And when you have that high NPS and that dedicated focus, customers realize the value you provide. You'll gain share, unseat competitors, reduce customer churn, and ultimately realize that profitable growth. For the data we're going to look at today, we did a macro analysis on 25 studies that our team completed with our manufacturing clients over the last 18 months. In these studies, our team conducted over 800 in-depth interviews with manufacturing distributors and end users. And we'll also overlay this data with other trends we track from industry leaders. So the first trend to share is the positive outlook on future spend. We compared our VOC data obtained from our interviews to what ITR Economics is predicting. Now, ITR is a leading economic predictor firm that Strategex follows closely. And to be clear, I am not the economy expert. In ITR's September Manufacturing Trends Report, they show the accelerated growth that we've experienced in almost every sector. And as they look to 2022, they're still projecting that growth, but not at the same acceleration rate that we had this year. But it is still growth and not a decline. Industries such as vehicle and truck production, oil and gas, and electrical equipment are a few of the industries called out to be in a great position as we head into the next 2 years. And this does correlate with what customers are telling us. Customers are very optimistic that their spend with their manufacturing suppliers will continue to increase over the next 2 years. So what do we do with this data? Well, knowing that growth is projected, but at a much more manageable pace, we really need to plan for this. We are telling our manufacturing clients to take this opportunity to get close to your customers so that you are in a position to capture their increasing spend and take share from the competition. The second trend we're seeing in our data is the increased demand for engagement. In 80% of the studies we've conducted over the last year and a half, engagement was the top area that manufacturing companies needed to focus on and improve. Customers, both distributors and end users, have an urgent need for improved relationships with manufacturers. They want their suppliers to be more proactive, especially when it comes to communication. They expect open dialogues around supply chain issues. They want to be kept informed on the rising cost of materials and shipping. And they especially want more communication around lead time delays. When customers say they want more engagement, what they're expecting is more collaboration and visibility with their suppliers.
Yeah, and I'd like to amplify that, Sharon. You know, what this really means in simple terms is that customers more now than ever expect their suppliers to understand their business as well as they do, to understand what their business priorities are, what's keeping them up at night, and to really be in a collaborative, strategic process with them, doing all they can as a supplier to help their customers succeed. And that's always the case in a time of crisis and challenging times, which I think we could all agree we've been in for the last 18 months. So engagement is really becoming strategic in the way great manufacturers are looking at their customer base, and in particular, of course, their top customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we reviewed data from our studies, and it was clear there is a direct correlation between engagement ratings and Net Promoter Scores. Our clients that had the top Net Promoter Scores also had best-in-class engagement ratings. And conversely, clients that we worked with that had low NPS scores also had very low engagement scores. And yes, some of our clients did have scores in the negative range, which means they had more detractors than promoters. But don't worry, we're working with them to get them on track. When our customers receive negative feedback and scores, we tell them, think of the information as a gift. It's an opportunity to look in the mirror and see what customers see and work to make the improvements needed. We tell our clients that these engagement ratings really need to be in that 9 to 10 range on the 1 to 10 scale. Anything lower than that starts affecting loyalty, your value proposition, and ultimately will affect your share of wallet. So after the demand for engagement, the next area that customers wanted their manufacturing suppliers to focus on is lead times and delivery. Even before the pandemic, lead times was an issue, and it's now been exacerbated by COVID and global supply chain. You might expect the theme we heard was to be to shorten lead times. And yes, customers did say this, but what they really begged for is more engagement around lead times. Customers want to stay better informed on inventory levels and back-ordered products. They want communication around ship dates. And if a lead time is going to extend, they want that information shared as quickly as possible so they can plan. Keep your customers apprised of delivery status and supply chain issues, and consider adding additional sourcing channels, and make sure you're prioritizing top accounts for product availability. Now, the next area our clients, for our clients to focus improvement on was customer support. In 46% of our studies, this was a key area of improvement for manufacturers. Customers are looking for better responsiveness, more follow-up, and shortened problem resolution time. They want proactive communication on status updates and organizational changes. There's also a desire for more training on equipment and the sharing of best practices. The last two areas that needed a focus are innovation and quality. Customers want their suppliers to dedicate time and resources to understand their needs and challenges. They want more collaborations to solve for pain points, and they want to innovate together for solutions that will enhance their products and differentiate them from competitors. And the themes around quality were similar. They focused on the need for manufacturing suppliers to help identify the root causes of issues and work together to implement a plan to address the problem and ultimately collaborate on a resolution. So all of these themes that came out from our studies, lead times, quality, service, innovation, they all really fall under the umbrella of engagement. The themes in each of these issues are collaborate more, communicate more, focus on the relationship between supplier and customer. Now more than ever, coming out of the pandemic, manufacturers need to invest the time and resources to become closer to their top accounts. We've all experienced 18 months of unprecedented challenges, and engagement is the key to coming through this stronger and better aligned with our customers' needs. Now, I know a lot of our clients go through distribution, and I'll add a comment here to say two things. First, engagement with your key distributors is critical. Make sure you have dedicated resources that are in constant communication with them. And second, you really should know who your top revenue end users are that go through distribution. If you don't have a relationship in place with those key end users to understand their needs and challenges and future trends, you're leaving a lot of revenue up to chance. I thought I'd share a few quotes from interviews our team conducted. Here are just a few. The response to the pandemic has been horrific. They're terrible at communicating. We never know if something's on back order or when it will ship. They need to be more personal. The sales rep doesn't ever come to me. He goes to my supervisor, who doesn't always know what's going on, even though I'm the guy who buys the product. We asked for some functions to be enhanced, and they told us, we'll see if it's on our roadmap, and we never heard from them again. Their engineers, while brilliant, determine where the company goes, in contrast to their biggest competitor, who talks to us and learns what we need. Another quote, they should sell to me more. Their competitors are in front of us more frequently, sharing their capabilities and future ideas. Because we have this long-standing relationship with them, they assume we know everything and we're good as is. And that last quote was actually from a distributor. And these are just a few examples of the hundreds of comments we collected that illustrate that demand for engagement from both key distributors and top accounts. So the next trend we're going to look at from our insights work is around digital CX strategies. A recent study by Twilio found that almost all companies, 95%, are seeking new ways of engaging customers as a result of COVID-19. 92% say that transforming digital communications is very critical to address current business challenges. Manufacturers need to leverage technology to give their B2B customers that exceptional digital experience. If you're not currently focusing on expanding your digital footprint, I would say beware, because your competitors likely are. So what is digital engagement? Well, the way we look at it for B2B is the use of digital channels to enhance your relationship with customers and prospect accounts. So what are the avenues? What avenues are customers looking to for manufacturers to implement? Well, first is e-commerce. B2B e-commerce is growing at an increasing rate and is twice the size of B2C e-commerce. Our customer insights data shows that B2B customers have an increased need for the Amazon experience. What buyers are using for their personal experience, they would like to see mirrored in their professional lives. Now, there's a lot happening in e-commerce, and customers really want the power to go beyond online ordering, and they're looking for content around products, spec sheets, customization options, online catalogs, and pricing information. If used correctly, digital e-commerce should enhance the customer relationship, not replace it. And remember, it's not just online ordering. You can use machine learning to drive product recommendations and dynamic pricing. If you can harness the power of digital engagement and add this as one of the areas that makes you easier to work with than your competitors, you should be on a good path to grow with your top accounts. The second area in the digital world that customers are expecting manufacturers to invest in is IoT, the Internet of Things. IoT is a crucial component for many equipment manufacturers' CX strategy. Having connected devices gives end users remote insights into daily operations for things like inventory, service updates, resource and energy usage, quality, safety, and preventative maintenance. According to Gartner Research, in 2014, the global Internet of Things market reached $485.6 billion. In 2019, it exceeded 1 trillion, with more than 40 billion connected devices. And several companies that we worked with when IoT first came out and was the hot thing were charging a premium for their IoT technology. And what they learned is that they didn't need to charge more by having the IoT capability. Instead, they were adding value to their clients and realizing growing revenue in other areas such as aftermarket service and parts. Now, the last digital format I'll touch on is customer portals. What good is all this technology without access, analytics, and control? The value of e-commerce and IoT can really come together in an easy-to-use control panel. Customers have shared with us their craving for a well-maintained portal that offers features like checking inventory levels, purchase history, invoicing, order tracking, and service records. A portal is what brings together e-commerce, IoT, and service. And make sure to work with your customers to develop a dashboard of KPIs that they would value tracking. Now, there are some tech no-nos when it comes to your top accounts. The theme here is do not displace human interaction with digital for your top accounts. Digital engagement has to be an added component to the relationship, not a replacement. Now, the chart here is based on the last 25 studies where we've addressed the idea of digital tools for our manufacturing clients. And what we found was 88% of respondents would value the implementation of a self-service tool. Some of the quotes we heard If they had an online tool to search for the product and track orders, that would be absolutely huge. I can't stress that enough. If we had transparency into the production schedule, it would allow for us to plan around the issues instead of dealing with them at the last second. They're on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast, so I could check inventory status when they're closed. And lastly, this can save time and free up customer service to focus on other areas. Like Amazon tracking, I'd like to see the status of my order in the production run and in shipping. Digital capabilities will be a requirement for all of our suppliers by 2023. And this last comment wasn't the only one we heard that mentioned digital tools will be a requirement for suppliers in the future. It's where the world is heading, and if you haven't started to explore what aspects of digital footprint your customers want and would value, I would say you need to do so ASAP.
Well, and I think it's also important to note that not only does the utilization of digital technology help deliver a better experience to your customers, it also at the very same time reduces your cost to serve, right? And that's that's been one of the byproducts of this pandemic, is that companies have realized that the use of digital tools really during this time has really lowered their cost to serve their customers. So not only are you delivering that better experience, you're actually improving your profitability because your ability to serve your customers is coming at a much lower cost.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have a digital roadmap for your business today, it's time to start creating one, because it really gives you benefits in both categories: customer experience and cost to serve. You know, the other thing that we've seen as a trend this past year is the unprecedented supply chain disruption and the impact that that's having on manufacturers all over the globe. And our research and what we've seen, and I'm sure all of you as well have seen, is that it's not going away anytime soon. These supply chain challenges are here for the foreseeable future. I know most companies are planning to see no real material change in 2022. And this is really wreaking havoc on the customer experience. It's really challenging companies because of product availability, right? Commodity inflation and other inflationary pressures coming from increased labor costs and raw material costs, labor shortages, shipping delays, right? All of these things are really translating into customers, manufacturers, not being able to give their customers the experience they want to give them, let alone what the customers expect, right? So what can we do, right? You know, change always creates opportunity, right? And what can we do in this crisis differently that will enable us in a challenged supply chain environment to perform better for our customers? One is, this is the time to simplify your business. This is the time to understand what products and customers in your business today are sucking up your limited resources that are diluting you from being able to overserve the customers that matter most. What products can you get rid of? What customers perhaps should you stop doing business with, so that you free up the limited resources that you have to be able to provide the customers that matter most the experience they need to see from you. Two, this is an opportunity to think about how you communicate with your customers differently, right? During this period of supply chain pressure and complexity, you can't communicate enough, right? You've got to be proactive in communicating delays that are forthcoming. You've got to be proactive in communicating price increases. And you can't be afraid to approach the price issue in a collaborative fashion. You can't be afraid to go to your customers and say, what are you willing to pay for me to get this product to you? There are all these challenges out there, but if you're willing to pay more and you help me understand what that is, then I can go do all the work I need to do to go find a solution for you. It's that type of dialogue that you should be having with your customers, because they need your help. They need that communication. They need that transparency. And the final thing you've got to do is you've got to make tough decisions to serve the customers that matter most in your business, those critical few, at the expense of those customers that matter least. This is not easy to do. It's counterintuitive to a lot of cultures, but you have to take that approach because ultimately in this time of crisis, you've got to protect and defend the core of what drives profitability in your business, right? And that's something that you really need to focus on. And it may mean saying no to a smaller order with a higher profit margin rate, right? Than the larger orders that maybe are at a lower gross margin, but for customers that contribute the majority of the profit dollars that come into the business, right? I had a discussion with a client just a couple of weeks ago on this topic, and they were very frustrated because their senior management was prioritizing smaller orders at a higher rate of profit over larger, more critical orders to their most important customers that were a bit at a lower rate of profit. That makes no sense, right? So this is really, this whole supply chain issue we're faced with really is an opportunity for organizations to think differently about how they engage with their customers and how they make decisions around allocating the precious few resources they have in product availability and factory capacity. So if we can move now to, we talked a lot about trends and things that we're seeing out in the marketplace. Let's start talking about solutions. You know, what can we do differently to create a customer experience that is going to be monetized effectively in your organization? And the first thing we need to understand is that the customer experience, if you go back a slide, Sharon, the customer experience cannot be created equally, right? Consistently delivering an exceptional experience to the most important customers in your portfolio is it's the critical success factor in driving sustainable, profitable growth in your business. We often find with many of the manufacturers that we speak to across a broad range of industries, most of them have operating cultures where every order is a good order and every customer is a good customer. And that simply isn't true. It just isn't true. It's tough for people to get their heads around that. It's amazing, but it's not true. And what it does is it creates incredible business complexity and dilutes the organization from delivering a differentiated value creation experience to the customers that matter most, the profit drivers in the organization, right? And we can't allow that to happen. So during this portion of the webinar, we're going to talk about how your organization can more effectively and efficiently monetize the experience you're delivering to your customers, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day, right? We all want to give great service to our customers. We all want to do great things for them. We all want them to love us. But we want to see that whatever we're doing to create that outcome for them is really enabling us to monetize it, right? To see it create incremental profitability in the business. And the first step in doing this, we believe, is to look at your business through the 80-20 lens, to help your organization to start thinking differently about how you can mobilize your finite resources to overserve your best customers at the intended expense of the rest, quite frankly, the insignificant many. And the first thing we do when we're looking at the business through an 80-20 lens is understand these pyramids. These are what we call the Nichols pyramids. John Nichols was the CEO of ITW back in the early 80s, and he had a background in economics, and he really applied and studied the Pareto principle and how it impacts business. And what he discovered, of course, is that 20% of the customers account for 80% of the revenue, but the overhead and the effort and the energy in the company wasn't distributed the same way. In fact, it was quite the opposite. What they discovered and this is a very data-driven methodology, is that the 20% of the customers that are driving 80% of the revenue in the business are only getting about 20% of the company's resources, because the company is consumed with over-serving the 80% of the customers that are only accounting for 20% of the revenue, right? Because the phone doesn't ring any differently from customer 1,000 to customer number 1. The order doesn't go through your system any differently. You don't collect the money any differently. You don't process the invoice any differently. You don't pick and ship the order any differently. You don't set up on the factory floor any differently. So what we find, if we go to the next slide, is that if you break down your customer base into 4 quartiles, and this example is 200 customers, what we find inevitably in any business, it's in a relevant range that 89% of your revenue will come from your top quartile. 7% of your revenue will come from the second quartile. 3% of your revenue will come from the third quartile, and 1% will come from the fourth quartile. We've looked at hundreds, if not thousands of companies, and it always comes out this way in a relevant range of maybe 2 to 3% in each category. But when you study the transactional data in the business, when you really study all that's going on in the business from an activity standpoint, what we find is that the effort is split pretty evenly, 25, 25, 25. So what this means is that quartile 1 is probably delivering 150 or more % of your profit. Quartile 2, if you're good, is maybe a break-even portfolio. Quartile 3, you're losing money on, and quartile 4, you're losing a lot of money on. So when we think about this in the context of the customer experience and what we have to do as an organization to deliver it, how much complexity and nuance and effort and energy is being consumed with resources that could be focused on over-serving, protecting, defending, earning the right to grow with the customers in quartiles 1. And what we find is that when companies look at the business this way and they allocate their customer experience delivery resources to the first quartile, they see an exponential level of growth. An exponential level of growth. Over and over again. So it's important that as you think about mobilizing the resource in your company to overserve and deliver customer experience, you can't do it the same way. Next slide. You've got to think about the one key to success, and that's treating them differently. Treating them differently. That doesn't mean you treat the smaller customers poorly. You treat them fairly, but not equally. So as you think about your customer experience, really ask yourself, what can we do differently to see to it that this part of our portfolio is getting a much different level of service and prioritization and focus and innovation and commitment than the part of your portfolio that really isn't making you any money and adding any value and is diluting you from doing what you really need to do to protect and defend and really create a foundation for sustainable, profitable growth. We go to the next slide. When we start thinking about strategy, so how do we operationalize this? The first thing we need to do, and it's really in our minds a 4-step process. 1, understand what your value is, what it needs to be to demonstrate a differentiated value proposition from your biggest and most competitor and your biggest competitors. What is your value? What does it need to be? What do your customers need it to be? And then who are you going to deliver it to, right? Your 80s, the 80s are the customers who represent 80% of your revenue. These are your most strategic customers. If you lost any of them, it would hurt. You would see an impact on your P&L. These are the companies you have to choose with purpose and intent to deliver this value to. Then you have to align the resources in the organization, people, equipment, factory space, supply chain availability to those customers. And then create a culture where there is relentless focus on seeing to it that that value proposition is consistently delivered and enhanced as you understand more and more about what it is your customers care about the most. If we go to the next slide, how do we really understand how to deliver value, what it should be, right? And I love this quote by Steve Jobs, right? Get closer than ever to your customers, so close that you tell them what they need well before they realize it themselves. We talk about engagement, right? This is engagement. Steve Jobs believed work from the customer point of view backwards. That's why VOC is so critical and such a strong weapon in your arsenal to put yourself in a competitive and advantageous position in the marketplace. So understand, what problems are you solving for your customers? What are their problems? What are their challenges? How do you compare to the competition in the areas that matter most to your customers? Is it a strength? Is it a weakness? Are you connecting your best strengths to the customer's most important needs? What is your secret sauce? What do you do exceptionally well? And are you connecting it to what you understand to be what's most important to your customers? Are you communicating to your customer how you deliver tangible economic benefit to their business? How what it is that you're doing is translating into incremental EBITDA, earnings in the business. Lots of manufacturers make the mistake of doing great things for the customers and letting their customers take it for granted. Never really even talking about it, right? And when you do present this, you learn every time how well it's being received and perhaps what else it is you can keep doing that would, in the eyes of the customer, create even more value, right? And always demonstrate that you really understand what their business priorities are, that you understand their business as well as they do, right? You can't do this with everybody. You can't do this, and some of you may have thousands of customers on this call. You have to choose the critical few, right, in quartile one that matter most. And the other thing that we know for certain, and why this is so important, is that within your existing customer base, within that top quartile, there is enormous amounts of trapped potential, addressable opportunity that you're able to serve that you're not getting today. But you have to earn the right first and then ask for it. And the way you do that is by taking this type of engagement approach to your clients. We go to the next slide. So how do we begin to think about looking at our resources and organizing them to treat customers differently, right? Well, the first thing you got to do is kind of stratify your customer base, right? And we like to make things simple at Strategex. So we say 3 categories. Your highest value, these are your most profitable. They buy your core wheelhouse products. They love what you're selling to them. They're value driven, meaning their mission in life isn't to see to it that you don't make a profit. They're okay with you making money on their business. They have a growth opportunity, meaning there's still opportunity to grow with them. These are the ones that you must protect and defend and earn the right to continue to grow with. Then you have the value and expansion customers. These are the ones that kind of look like your highest value customers, but you're not really serving them at a level today that's allowing you to monetize the trapped potential that exists within those customers. Who are they? Which customers in your portfolio are you doing okay with, but you know enough about their organizational profile to know that there's a lot more opportunity that you can go get with perhaps a different engagement strategy. These are the potential whales, right? They have significant profit potential for your business. And the third are the transactions. These are your small, probably most likely never going to be big, mid-sized customers, that you sell core products and services to, but very limited value expansion. So how do you treat them differently? Well, the strategy for the highest value would be maybe dedicated teams, customer-specific KPIs, having an innovation plan, doing a VOC with them once a year, right? Doing quarterly business reviews, really having a Ravings fans playbook in place. Second category is the value expansion, and it's very sales and marketing driven, right? You've got, again, you're using VOC, you've got executive sponsors on these accounts. It's very targeted where you're going to go grow in that portion of your portfolio with a treat them different strategy. And then transactionals, back to some of what Sharon was talking about with digital, could be e-commerce, right? Maybe shift to an inside sales or customer service function. It's a lower touch model, right? Low cost to serve. That doesn't mean the customer isn't getting a good experience. It just means it's different so that you can take those resources, more resources, and apply it to the highest value and customer expansion opportunities. So this is how you begin to mobilize the organization to engage differently. That not only translates into a better experience for the customer, but more importantly, enables you to monetize what it is you're doing in delivering that experience. Next slide. So we talk about raving fans, and I would challenge everybody on this call to think about this. How many raving fans do you really have in your business today? What are the traits of raving fans? They always buy from you. They want to buy more from you. They want you to give them a reason to buy more from you. They see you as a true business partner. They boast to you about others. They'll go out and unsolicited, perhaps, do a testimonial for you to a customer you're trying to pursue. How many customers in your portfolio today have these traits? That's what you need to be thinking about customer experience. So the customer experience should really be directed to those that matter most. And VOC, NPS, all the insights are more important than ever to give you the information you need to do this effectively. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Sharon.
Thanks, David. So when we talk about customer engagement, taking that dedicated focus, it has to include everyone throughout your organization. Every employee should know who those top accounts are, who those high value whales are, and they should be on a mission to build trust and loyalty with those accounts. Characteristics of clients we work with that have those high net promoter score and high engagement scores have several behaviors in common. First, noticeable responsiveness. There's often an edict throughout the organization that no top customer, goes unanswered for longer than, 60 to 90 minutes. Second, having a team with a friendly, positive attitude, someone that your customers like to reach out to and work with. Third, having a team that's proactive and takes initiative. They're not waiting for the phone to ring for those top accounts. They've got the outreach going and they're reaching out constantly, staying in communication. Four, having a team that's dependable and able to get things done. So often we hear quotes like, I love my sales rep. He understands where I'm going, but he can't do anything for me. The request just kind of ended him, and then he's got to go through layer after layer to get anything accomplished. Fifth is flexibility and being accommodating. We know that we're in a time where the world is changing by the minute. Every day is presenting a new set of challenges. So we've got to make sure that we have that flexibility built into the culture to accommodate our clients' ever-changing needs. And lastly, really make sure your team understands the top accounts business. Make sure they're on site, they're in their plants, they're knowing firsthand the issues they're wrestling with, and the pain points they need solved. Now, these behaviors really all boil down to trust. Your top account should view you as a partner and an extension of their own business. And we had one client implement the Raving Fan program where posters were hung throughout the plant with the names of those top customers. Everyone in the organization, throughout knew who they were and what the intent was. These customers come first above all our other accounts. Even the UPS guy knew who their top customers were. And with the focus on delighting the customer, this account was able to raise their Net Promoter Score from a 55 to an 89 for their top 3 customers in a 16-month period. So what does all this mean? For your top accounts, the customer experience has to be exceptional. Use the 80-20 principles when implementing voice of the customer work in your organization. Make sure you're focused on getting feedback from the accounts that matter most. Go deep to understand their pain points and areas you can work together on to improve the relationship. The biggest fault we see is assuming that we know what customers want. Instead, you need to make sure you ask and listen. Talk less, listen more. And collaborate with them on solutions that address their issues, not the issues you're assuming they're wrestling with. Understand what the drivers are and how you can be seen as an extension of their business, an extension that they can't live without. And that loyal partnership relationship is really the key to manufacturers realizing profitable revenue growth with the accounts that matter most. So with that, Dave, I'll turn it over to you. Any questions that came through?
Thank you, Sharon and David. Great insights and conversation. And I do have a few questions to share, and to anybody else that has something that they would like to bring up in Q&A, go ahead and use that feature in the bottom of the Zoom application. So for the first question, how do you satisfy your 80 customers who buy the some 20 products or options that have long, nearly unacceptable lead times?
Yeah, it's a great question. And what we talk about is your top accounts are going to want you to supply them with products that are perhaps more challenging to manufacture. They're your B items, and that perhaps are associated with longer lead times. We call it the necessary evil transaction, right? You would prefer not to have to engage in trying to serve that need, but you have to because it's your top account. And it's at this point more than ever, coming back to some of the supply chain dialogue we had, that you've got to be proactive in going to them and saying, here's the deal with this product. Can you use an alternative, right? Can you wait an extra few weeks, right? Is there a new product that we can make more quickly that would solve your need? So don't, put it under the rug. Be very proactive in going to them. Know that you've got to find a solution with them, make them part of the process, right? And you'll find that the customer will ultimately decide whether the one will pay more money perhaps for an alternative, agree to a longer lead time as long as they know about it, they can plan around it, right? Or just perhaps cancel the order altogether and go to another supplier. But it's that transparent, proactive communication that's mission critical with your A customers on those types of transactions, not just today in this challenging environment, but always.
Thank you, David. You spoke about it a little bit earlier about just the impact the crisis has had on all of our businesses, but what behaviors had B2B customers now learned over this crisis that you expect to stay and affect the way they buy?
Oh yeah, they are a lot of manufacturers, a lot of companies, I think up until these last 18 months, probably in many regards took their supply chain for granted, right? So you're going to see a much deeper level and an ongoing level of interrogation of the supply chain, what it is their most critical suppliers have in place for when situations like this present themselves again, and they will inevitably, what their mitigation plan is, how will they be prioritized over others, That's I will tell you, I'm not going to mention the name, but we have a client just recently that is a very large client, one of the largest companies in the world. And they are, our clients fell way behind for their customer. And we encouraged our client to do whatever they had to do to figure this out at the expense of other customers in their portfolio. They knew they were going to make other customers upset. And what this client did was really change everything in the plant to get these deliveries taken care of. And literally the very next day, their customer said, we've got this other order for you that we want you to take on now because of what you're doing during this global supply chain environment we're in. What you guys did to move around our orders is going to come back to them in spades. So what I think you're going to find is that manufacturers, customers are going to understand more clearly what is the risk mitigation plan, what is it that their suppliers are going to do proactively to ensure that there's going to be less disruption in their supply chain going forward, and how capable is the manufacturer of being able to sustain that type of operating environment. So much deeper dives on the suppliers that they do business with. I think that's here to stay.
Yeah, the other trend I'll add, about 10 years ago, we saw a much higher percentage of the customers we interviewed sole sourced. And we almost never hear that today. And I think that trend is here to stay for the near future, at least. And that just makes it ever more important, as David said, to really have that dedicated focus and make sure you're serving and capturing share and increasing share at those top accounts.
Yeah, and it gives you an opportunity to communicate how you're prioritizing them, right? Where they really sit. And as compared to others.
Yeah.
They're going to want to know that.
Yep. They're going to want to treat it differently.
Thank you. And I have a two-parter to throw at you both. So do you have any other recommendations for strategies to enhance customer experience to both B2B and B2C? And then for the second part, are there any differences in approaches to how you address customer experience in B2B versus B2C?
So we do focus, like 99% of our work is in B2B. So B2C can be a totally different animal. What I'll say from what I've seen in B2B, they're really lagging the B2C industry in e-commerce and digital strategies. I think Amazon has set a B2C bar that the B2B world is quickly trying to chase and become more relevant in. B2B has to be much more relationship driven than B2C. B2C is more transactional, B2B has to be relationship driven. And I think really developing partnerships with your key accounts, that has to be a main focus. So it's less of a PR play and really more about account-based marketing strategies in B2B.
Yeah, and we just keep coming back to that word engagement. Right.
Yeah.
And really understanding your customer's business as well as they do, right? Bringing them solutions before they're even asking for them, right? And doing the research, spending the money, the time to understand what your competition doesn't understand, right? This comes back to you in spades every time, and it's amazing how many companies choose not to do it. Right? So if you're going to be B2B and you're thinking about customer experience, it's table stakes to really understand their business as well as you possibly can.
So David, I think this would be another one that makes sense to direct towards you as well. How does a company make the mental switch from customer service being more of a logistics run to sales and marketing position?
Yeah. So it's an interesting question. So if I'm hearing it correctly, you've got a culture that's really focused on transaction, right? Getting out the door efficiently. It's a very transaction, driven culture, as opposed to a customer facing culture, right? So if you're shifting from a logistics transaction operations driven business. I'm not saying that's not important, but you want to move to more of a customer-facing, sales-driven, customer intimacy approach. What you need to do is redefine, much like what I showed you in that tiered approach of treating them differently, redefine how the organization, not only operationally and logistically, is going to serve those customers differently, because they should, right? But how the engagements are going to vary differently, and really developing and seeing the engagement as part of your strategic advantage, right? And the relationship and the way you engage and communicate and innovate and deliver value becomes much more strategic than a culture that would be more oriented around logistics and operations.
Excellent, thank you. I think we have time just for one more question we'll throw out to the two of you. How do B2B customers and partners currently view self-service portals and applications? And if you're seeing that they are seen as valued, are there any metrics to target regarding ROI that our members should be looking at?
Yeah, two things should come to life by bringing forth portals and apps and things of that nature that your customers can use as a means for doing business with you. One, you should see it, and you should be getting this feedback from your customers that you become easier to do business with, right? It's just easier, right? And that should translate into incremental wallet share growth with those customers. There should be a direct relationship between the degree to which you're making it easier for your customers to do business with and the amount of business you're getting from them and the margin, quite frankly, that you're making on them, right? So those would be the things that I would track. If I was putting those tools in place, what I would be looking at is, what is my revenue doing with these customers? What am I hearing back in the way of qualitative accolades in terms of how they think about us as a supplier? And then the other thing that should come about that you can measure is what's happening to my cost to serve. To what degree have those portals and those apps lowered my cost to serve? Do I need fewer people, right? Do I need fewer processes? Is the transaction moving more efficiently through my business that's translating into a lower cost to serve? And that's very easy to calculate as well. So those would be the things that we would be looking at. And by the way, what we do see when portals and apps that are developed for customers are put forth, generally speaking, what we see are an increase in share with those customers and a lower cost to serve, thereby creating an improved level of profitability.
Yeah, especially if they're co-developed with their partners, with their customers. If they're developing their top account needs, you'll really see that ROI.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for answering those questions at the end there. We are up on time, so we will answer any other questions offline. The question also came up. This is recorded, replay, and slides will be available. Thank you again to David and Sharon, and of course, Strategex. To everybody on the line, thank you for joining us. You will see the survey pop up in the browser after you exit the webinar. Thank you again to everybody for your time, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Of course. Have a good day.